Yeah. Okay. Shabbat Shalom. Is that enough? Yeah.
Our stick on muffins, are they still members?
No.
I'm meeting up with Greg for lunch today, so they usually just come home and go. But their three boys were all. Because Greg was like.
I don't think so.
I saw they came with Janet Tresman when she was.
Michael, can we let them in yet?
Just give me a second, Josie. Oh,
Okay,
who's doing what? Who's doing what here? The hell's going on there? Josie? Hello?
Yes,
I think we can let people in now.
yes, I know. Danielle can't see the waiting room at the moment for some reason. So I've asked Valerie to do it.
I've let them in, Josie.
Okay.
I grew up with nursery rhymes.
So Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Shabbat Shalom to all of you who are here in the sanctuary. Shabbat Shalom to you at home in our new hybrid community that we are fast getting used to. We welcome you this morning for our Shabbat service and an opportunity to reflect a little on Ajax Remembrance Day tomorrow, to hear from a couple of our members and to allow that to be part of our service. So let us begin, as always, with Matovu. We're service number 4 today, page 122. Stand if you would like or are able. If you're at home, ready to transform whatever space you're in into a sanctuary of prayer alongside us.
Israel,
Sit down and remind ourselves what it means to be in community. Eternal God, we come before you surrounded by members of our community. With them we share our happiness and it becomes greater, our troubles and they become smaller. May we never be too mean to give nor too proud to receive, for in giving and receiving we discover you and begin to understand the meaning of life. Let us not separate ourselves from the true strength of our community, the experience and wisdom of old people, the hopes of the young, and the examples of care and courage which sustain us. Give us an open mind and a generous heart to welcome those who need us and to admit your presence into our daily life. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Hoseh Yisrael bikvora. We should revere God in all that we do, privately as well as publicly, acknowledge the truth and speak it in our hearts. Ribon kol ha'olamim, lo al zitkotenu anachnu mapilim, tachanunenu lefanecha, ki al rachamecha harabim. For what are we? In this description of ourselves as we stand here in this moment of prayer. What are we? What is our life? What our piety? What our goodness? What our strength? What can we say in your presence, eternal God? Are not the mightiest of us as nothing before you? The famous as though they'd never lived? The learned as if they had no knowledge? The wise as if without understanding? For most of what we do is futile and our life on earth is but a span. Our superiority over other animals amounts to little, for all is vanity. Hakol havel. Nevertheless, let's read together. We are your people, children of your covenant, and called to your service. Therefore it is right that we should thank and praise you, proclaim your holiness, and daily say before you.
Ashreinu, Mato, 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 Helgenu. Ashreinu, Ashreinu, Mato, 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 Helgenu. Manayim, 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 Goralenu. Manayim, 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 Goralenu. Manayim, 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 Goralenu. Manayim, 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 Goralenu. Umayapa, 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 Yerushatenu, Ashreinu. Umayapa, 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 Yerushatenu, Ashreinu.
So we go into the second part of the morning service, Psukei de Zimra, verses of praise. I'm on page 124. And so we offer this expression not just for praise, but for gratitude as well. Baruch Shama v'haya ha'olam baruchu. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam. Hamchulal b'fi amo meshubach umfa'ah b'shon chasidav avadav. Bishvachot uvizmarot. Negadelcha v'namlichecha. Malkeinu yachid chei ha'olamim. Baruch atah Adonai melech mechulal b'tishbachot. At dawn and dusk I seek you, reach out and look to you. With soul athirst I yearn for you. I am a beggar at your door. The galaxies cannot contain you, yet you dwell in my inmost being. I hold your glory in my heart. My love for you exceeds my speech. So I will praise your name, Eternal One, as long as your breath of life remains within me. Baruch Adonai le'olam, amen v'amen. Baruch Adonai Elohim, Elohei Yisrael, osei niflaot levado. Uvaruch Shem kovodo le'olam v'yamaleh kovodo. Et kol haaretz. Amen v'amen.
Yishmat kol chai, tevaret et shimcha. Adonai Eloheinu, ruach kol basar, tevaeh u'trameh, zichrecha malkeinu tamid. Min ha'olam ve'ad ha'olam, ata
So let's turn to Yishtabach on page 128. Let's stand, if you're comfortable, you're able.
ישתבח שמך לעד מלכנו, האל המלך הגדול והקדוש בשמיים ובארץ. כי לך נאה אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו. שיר ושבחה, הלל וזמרה, ברכות והודאות מעתה ועד עולם. ברוך אתה אדוני הבוחר בשירי זמרה.
Page 135, let's go to the Baruch Hu, public call to prayer, having welcomed each other, Shabbat, ready to go towards the Shema.
Baruch Hu et Adonai
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, yotze or uvore choshech, ose shalom uvore hakol, hameir la'aretz v'ledarim aleha barachamim, uvtuvo machadesh b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh v'reshit, ma rabu masecha Adonai, kulam b'hochma asita, melah ha'aretz kinyanecha, titbarach Adonai Eloheinu al shevach ma'aseh yadecha, V'yal morei or she'asita, Yefaruch ha'sela, Baruch atah Adonai, Yotzeh hamorot. And the second blessing before the Shema that allows us to see our faith, our religion, our tradition as one of love. Ahava rabbah ahavtanu Adonai Eloheinu, Chemla gdola v'yitera chamalta aleinu, Avinu malkeinu ba'avo avotenu, Shivatchu v'cha v'talmidem chukei chayim, ken techanenu v'talmidenu, v'ten b'libenu lahavinu lahaskil lishmoa, lilmod u'lalamed lishmo v'la'asot u'lakayam et kol divrei Toratecha b'ahava. Incline our hearts to hear your words, to know, to understand, to learn, to teach, and with love to uphold the truths of your Torah. Enlighten us with your teaching, make us faithful to your commandments, and wholehearted in the love and awe of your name. For in love you summon us to serve you and proclaim your unity. Baruch atah Adonai, habocher b'yamo Yisrael b'ahava. So let's stand again for our watchword of faith, for the words of the Shema. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto
So as we read the words of the first paragraph of the Shema, I invite you to do it in Hebrew or English. I'm going to lead in English this morning so that we really remind ourselves of what we sign up to in our Jewish life. You shall love the Eternal One, your God, with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. Let these words which I command you this day be always in your heart. Teach them diligently to your children and other people's children. Speak of them in your home, on your way, when you lie down, when you rise up in the mornings. Bind them as a sign upon your hand. Let them be like frontlets, like signs between your eyes. Inscribe them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates.
ועשיתם כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם.
wanted to share, as I sometimes do, the words of Rabbi Israel Matuk about the idea of truth. The paragraph after the Shema calls us to affirm emet. This is true, what we offer in the Shema. And Rabbi Israel Matuk suggested, truth is not the best loved of virtues, and yet it is one of the noblest, as it is perhaps the hardest of them all. It needs courage and resolution and strength of will. It must be loved for its own sake, or it will not be practiced. So with great joy we recall our ancestors standing at the shores of the sea. With great joy Moses, Miriam and all Israel together sang to you this song. שירה חדשה שיפחו גולים לשמך על שפת הים, יחד כולם הודו והמליכו ואמרו.
אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. צו ישראל קומה בעזרת ישראל, גואלנו אדוני צבאות שמו, גואלנו אדוני צבאות שמו, קדוש ישראל, ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
So we stand now for the tefillah, the Amidah, our standing prayer.
Adonai sefati tiftak ufia giteilatecha. Adonai sefati tiftak ufia giteilatecha.
I'm so conscious every time we offer this prayer, this our standing prayer, this first paragraph that calls us to recall our ancestors, whether we were born Jewish, whether we choose Judaism, that sense of just slotting right in to tradition. And we read about these ancestors right now in the midst of the book of Genesis. So let me invite us all today to imagine who in our own lives, who signposted and perhaps enabled us to be here this morning in our congregation together. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Hasadim Tovim v'Konei Hakol, v'Zocher Chasdei Avot v'Imahot, u'Mevi Gula Livnei v'Nehem, Lema'an Shemo B'Yahava, Melech Hosea Moshiach Magen, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Avraham Vezrat Sarah. Atah Gibor Leolam Adonai, Machaye Meti Mata Rav LaHoshia, Mashiv HaRuach Umorid HaGeshem, Mazriach HaShemesh Umorid HaTal.
Mepalkel Chayim Bechesed Mechayeh Meiti Barachamim Rabim Somech Noflim Profeh Cholim Umatir Asurim Umakayem Emunato Mishenei Afar Mi Kamocha
למען אתה להחיות מתים. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיה המתים. נקדש את שמך בעולם כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרו, ככתוב על יד נביאך.
Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzevaot, Melech ol haaretz kevodo.
כבודו מלא עולם.
Baruch kevod Adonai, ממקומו.
ממקומך מלכנו תופיע ותמלוך עלינו, כי מחכים אנחנו לך.
Loch Adonai leolam, Elohai Zion. Dov Ador, Hallelujah. Le Dov Ador, le Dov Ador, le Dov Ador, nagid God lecha, ולנצח נצחים, ולנצח נצחים, קדושתך נקדיש. לדוב הדור, לדוב הדור, לדוב הדור נגיד God לך, ולנצח נצחים, ולנצח נצחים, קדושתך נקדיש. בשמך אלוהינו, מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד. כי אל מלך גדול, כי אל מלך גדול, הקדוש ברוך הוא. לדוב הדור, לדוב הדור, לדוב הדור נגיד God לך, ולנצח נצחים, ולנצח נצחים, קדושתך נקדיש.
Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh. Let's sit down, having marked the generational pull of being in congregation. And let's say together the words of marking Shabbat, of what it means. Soon we're going to be asking you all in some kind of survey. We feel it feels really important, and I thank Gordon, a wonderful member of our council, how you're all feeling about being back in the building. About is it a certain trepidation that's making us stay away? Those of us who come, what are the reasons why we want to come and be in the building? Those who stay at home, what are the reasons for you staying at home? Just so that we can work out what this new community congregation looks like post-COVID-19, and to hold on to that connection that we have together. So let's read from the bottom of page 142. You inspired our ancestors to hallow this day for your service. When upon its coming we pause to contemplate our life, we learn anew that we do not live by bread alone, but also by the spiritual nourishment we receive when we open ourselves to your influence. We thank you for Sabbath day, for the opportunity it offers to enhance the quality of our lives. We thank you for its joy and for its peace. May our worship help us to take into our hearts its message of holiness and consecrate all our days by devotion to what is true, beautiful, and good.
Shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei onei Shabbat. Yismachu b'malachutecha. Shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei onei Shabbat. Mekadeshim, Mekadeshim shevi Shabbat. Kulam yismu ויפתמו מטובך שבת, ישמחו במלכותך. Shabbat. Yismachu b'malachutacha. Shomrei, shomrei, shomrei Shabbat. V'korei oneg Shabbat. Yismachu b'malachutacha. Shomrei, shomrei, shomrei Shabbat. V'korei oneg Shabbat. Zecher Maseh, the Maseh Bereshit Shabbat. Zecher Maseh, the Maseh Bereshit Shabbat. Yismachu b'malachutacha. Shomrei, shomrei, shomrei Shabbat. V'korei oneg Shabbat. Yismachu b'malachutacha. Shomrei, shomrei, shomrei Shabbat. V'korei oneg Shabbat.
Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu, ratzeh v'mnuchatenu, kachenu b'mitzvotecha v'ten chalkenu b'toratecha, sabenu mituvecha v'samchenu b'shuatecha, v'taheh libenu la'ovdecha be'emet, v'hanchilenu Adonai Eloheinu b'yahava v'ratzon, Shabbat kodshecha, v'yanuchu v'Yisrael, mekadshe shemecha. Baruch ata Adonai, mekadesh ha-Shabbat. Eternal God, let's read together. Be gracious to your people, Israel. In your love, accept their prayers. May our worship now and always be acceptable in your sight. We praise you, O God, whom alone we worship in reverence. And as always, as we offer our blessing, our paragraph before we reach the end of the Amidah, of thanksgiving, of gratitude, of appreciation, I encourage all of us to think in our hearts of what we in our own lives can feel appreciative for, to allow a spark of kavanah, of spiritual direction, as we offer this prayer. Modim anachnu lach. Shata hu Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu leolam va'ed. Tzor hayenu magen yishenu, atahu ledovado. Nodeh lecha nsaper tehilatecha, al hayenu hamsarim biyadecha, v'al nishmotenu hapekudot lach. V'al nisecha shebachol yom imanu, v'al niflotecha v'tovotecha, shebachol eit erev v'voker v'tzoharayim. Baruch ata Adonai, Hatov Shimcha, Ulacha Na'eh Lohodot.
Sim shalom, tova uvracha, cheva chesed v'rachamim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, amecha, barchenu avinu, kulanu ke'echad, v'or panecha. Ki ve'or panecha natata lanu, Adonai Eloheinu. Sim shalom, tova uvracha, cheva chesed v'rachamim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, amecha, Torat chaim, ve'ahavat chesed, u'tzedaka uvracha v'rachamim, v'chaim v'shalom. Sim shalom, tova uvracha, cheva chesed v'rachamim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, amecha, v'tov בעיניך לברך את עמך ישראל בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. שים שלום, טובה וברכה, חן וחסד ורחמים עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ועל כל ישראל עמך.
Baruch atah Adonai, Oseh HaShalom, for our morning prayer for peace. Let's take a few moments now for silent prayer, for reflection. The charge fairly levelled against us Jews and how we pray, as we know, is that we don't often pause for long periods of silence. But let's give ourselves a couple of minutes right now.
Adonai Turi, Adonai Turi, Begoali, Ratzon, Irefi, Begoali, Lefanecha, Adonai Turi, Begoali, Adonai Turi, Begoali. Ose shalom bimroma, Yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol bnei Adam. Ose shalom bimroma, Yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol bnei Adam. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael.
So before we go to the Torah service today, can I invite us to turn to page 188, the themed reading for this Shabbat on Jewish identity. And I wanted to share just two pieces that always strike me and I love for this parasha, Vayishlach, and what it calls us to think about. Actually, whichever bit we read from is what are what our identity is as a Jew. And I am really aware that in my role as rabbi, I hear all of you in the congregation talk about what it means for you to be Jewish, what it has meant through your lives, through the choices that you've made. And I feel these two pieces, one by Rabbi John Rayner, as we know in his modesty, anything that says new in the book was written by him when he chose not to attribute himself, and also by the French writer Edmund Flegg. So on page 188, all through the ages, we have held fast to our sense of covenant, of feeling bound to God in a special relationship that has given meaning to our existence. Because of it, and for its sake, we've suffered. In its name and by its power, we have made our distinctive contribution to civilization. And when Jews think or speak in other terms, they yet show a concern with ultimate value, caring for truth and justice, freedom and peace. And today I felt this was so significant to read on our day of Mitzvah Day and our reminding ourselves how we are engaged with the wider world. So John Rayner continues, they are impatient with the world as it is and feel an urge to make it better. Even when we reject it, religion is embedded in our consciousness. Like Jacob, we wrestle with our Creator. Like Jonah, even if we try, we cannot escape the gravitational pull of a sacred obligation undertaken long ago. And I'm interested to hear from you at the end of the service whether this piece speaks to you. But let's turn now to page 190, and I invite you to read responsively to me. With me. I am a Jew because the faith of Israel demands of me no abdication of the mind. I am a Jew because the faith of Israel demands of me all devotion of my heart. I am a Jew because in every place where suffering weeps, the Jew weeps.
I am a Jew because at every time when despair cries out, the Jew hopes.
I am a Jew because at every time when despair cries out, the Jew hopes. I am a Jew because the word of Israel is the oldest and the newest.
I am a Jew because the promise of Israel is the universal promise.
I am a Jew because for Israel the world is not yet completed. Human beings are completing it.
I am a Jew because for Israel humanity is not created. Human beings are creating it.
I am a Jew because above the nations in Israel, Israel places humanity and its unity.
I am a Jew because above humanity, unity of divine unity, Israel places divine unity.
Thank you for sharing that and reminding us, for some of us, what this is about. So let's turn now to our Torah service. We have interesting Torah reading today, but more of that in a moment. We're on page 481 as we turn to the heart of our Torah, the heart of our Shabbat morning service.
Elohim Adonai ve'en k'maasecha malchutecha malchut kol olamim u'memshaltecha b'chol dor v'dor Adonai melech Adonai malach Adonai imloch le'olam va'ed Adonai oz le'amo yitei Adonai yevarech et amo b'shalom.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Echad Eloheinu Gadol Adonenu Kadosh Shemo
Gadlu l'Adonai iti onoramama shemo yachdan.
Lecha Adonai Hagdula v'Hagvura v'Hatiferet כל בשמיים ובארץ, לך אדוני הממלכה והמתנשא לכל לראש.
So let's sit down. Just as the Torah comes over. Thank you, Philip. So, I have chosen our reading from Vayishlach, which we have not had, I think, for many years. If ever, Josie tells me that we have not read this before. And Vayishlach, which is a portion in the midst of the book of Genesis, which has Jacob anxious about his reunion with Esau, with his brother, which has a sense of Jacob growing as a human being. He already now has all his 12 sons and his one daughter. And what happens in this portion is really an extraordinary piece of text. And we know that the Torah is not written with chapters. It was not written with headings and titles of chapters. Yet this chapter, chapter 34 of the book of Genesis, is known as the rape of Dinah. And yet, what I want to suggest to you, and I have chosen this reading and then a rather brutal haftarah to echo it, but my response to each, to the Torah and the haftarah, is radically different. And what I am going to invite us all to do today is to come to this text with an open mind. And for me, this text offers us the opportunity to realize that Judaism is all about interpretation. And we may be liberal Jews, we may be further away from the intricacies of text, but actually not with Torah. We continue to read Torah every week. We continue to feel ourselves, as we heard the words of Edmund Flegg and John Rayner, we continue to feel ourselves called to react and be highly connected to the wider world. And we have these constant reminders and stories in our tradition that call on us to listen closely. I'm using this morning, because we're going to talk a little bit later about Ajax and marking that moment, that I'm going to say a little bit more now. This text, and indeed the Haftarah, is known traditionally as one of the texts of terror, where a woman is a victim of the story. But as well in this text is something else that is going on that I want to suggest to you. That something about a disingenuous xenophobia that runs through Torah that we choose to be really honest about. I want to tell you that when you read what happens and how Jacob listens, he listens to what happens to Dinah. He listens to how his sons speak about it. He listens to the behavior and the recommendations of Dinah's full brothers, Shimon and Levi. And then we see in 4 chapters later, when Jacob blesses all his sons, he is furious with Shimon and Levi about how they have behaved in this section. We see Jewish tradition choosing to blame Dinah in the way that we know we can absolutely identify different stages in Jewish tradition of how things are treated. That by rabbinic times, this extraordinary story of Dinah, honestly, we can count on 2 hands stories that are about named women in Torah. This story about Dinah and what happens to her, with her, about her, is blamed on her and her mother, with the rabbis, one rabbi, Rabbi Barachia, in the name of Rabbi Levi, offers a terrible midrash where he says this is like a story of a piece of meat being uncovered to the naked eye and a bird swooping down to take it. Such does the blame fall upon Dinah for what happened to her. Another midrash suggests like mother, like daughter, Leah went out to greet Jacob, and Dinah went out to meet the daughters of the land, and therefore fell into disrepute. But I ask you to listen to the text, and I ask you to listen out for the words in Hebrew, lakach, which means to take. This is one of the words that allow commentators to say Dinah was taken against her will, and yet the word lakach is used all the time for taking a partner. Isaac took Rebecca into his tent and loved her. So I want you to listen. Anita Diamond became shot to fame as a best-selling Jewish author, then became a teacher, now very famously has created a new mikveh project for the Reform movement. Why? Because she wrote a modern midrash about this very story about Dinah. I feel the echo of Jewish Women's Aid Shabbat ringing in our ears, and that injunction to us all that abuse of women does not happen only outside the Jewish community. There is plenty going on here. So this seems fortuitous to us to hear from Torah, and Margot's going to read an even more difficult piece of Haftarah from the book of Judges, but keep an open mind, and I'll say a little bit more about it when we come out of the Torah reading. Watch the words Shema, to listen. Watch how Jacob is silent. Watch what it means to be silent, and whether he is silent in an appropriate way or not. So having set that up, I'm really hoping you're going to enjoy this Torah portion. I'm just opening my phone to get Ian, your Hebrew name, ready to call you up, and we are honored by you being called up this morning. Ya'amod. Thank you. Ya'amod, Yitzchak ben Shmuel, levarech et haTorah.
Baruch hu es Adonai Hamavaroch, Baruch Adonai Hamavaroch li'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam asher b'chabanu b'kol ha'amim v'nosan lanu es Torah. Baruch atah Adonai noseinu Torah.
Amen.
Amen.
I've just rolled this, and now I've just give me a moment. Here we are. If you want to hold the eighth for me. Thank you. Vatetzei Dinah bat Leah asher yalda liYaakov lirot bivnot haaretz vaya ota Shechem ben Hamor hachivi nasi haaretz vayikach ota vayashkev ota vaya'aneha vatidbak nafsho bedina bat Yaakov ויאהב את הנערה, וידבר על לב הנערה. ויאמר שכם אל חמור אביו לאמור, קח לי את הילדה הזאת לאישה. ויעקב שמע כי טימא את דינה ביתו, ובניו היו את מקנהו בשדה, והחריש יעקב עד בואם. ויצא חמור אבי שכם אל יעקב לדבר אותו. ובני יעקב באו מן השדה כשמם, ויתעצבו האנשים ויחל להם מאוד, כי נבלה עשה בישראל לשכב את בת יעקב. וכן לא יעשה. וידבר חמור איתם לאמור, שכם בני השגה נפשו בביתכם, תנו נא איתה לא לאישה, והתחתנו אותנו בנותיכם, תיתנו לנו את בנותינו, תיקחו לכם ואתנו תשבו והארץ תהיה לפניהם, שבו Urs ha-huhar, v'ha'asru vayome Shechem el aviha, ve'el achecha, emsa chen be'enechem, va'asher tomru elai, eten harbo, v'tomru, sorry, I've just dropped a line, emsa chen be'enechem, va'asher tomru elai, eten harbo elai, ma'od, moha, umatan, ve'etne ka'asher. I'm going to translate up to this point and then we'll have a little bit more. So Dinah goes out, the daughter of Leah, who had been born to Jacob. She goes out, this is the only time we see this expression. She goes out to see the daughters of the land, meaning she's independent. She goes out, but she's seeing the other girls and women there. And Shechem sees her. Shechem is the son of Hamor, who is a Hivite, prince of the land, and he sees her, and he takes her, and he lies with her, and he humiliates her. But his soul cleaves to her. He loves her greatly. His soul cleaves to Dinah, the daughter of Jacob, and he loves the girl, and he speaks to her heart. This is not the description. Forgive me for offering my take this morning. This does not seem to be the description of a forceful, violent, humiliating rape, of which we have many in Torah, and Margot indeed is going to read about such one. And Shechem goes immediately to speak to his father, and he speaks to his father Hamor to say, please get me this girl for wife. Please allow her to become my wife. And Jacob hears about this thing that happened to Dinah, I don't know why I'm losing this word, this impurification, like this taking advantage of Dinah, his daughter. And then immediately, this is so strange, Jacob, who has no problem speaking up about all sorts of things, we immediately have in Torah this description. And his sons were busy with their cattle in the field, and Jacob stays completely silent until they return. And Hamor, the father of Shechem, comes out to see Jacob, to speak to him and his sons. And the sons of Jacob come in from the field, and they hear about what's happened, and they are exceedingly upset. The men are furious beyond degree. They have heard about this terrible thing that he did, and this thing to lie with a daughter from Israel, a daughter of Jacob in Israel, this thing is not done. It is not allowed. And Hamor speaks to all of them. Note how Hamor can sense that the brothers have as much authority as Dinah's father, and speaks to them all and says, Shechem, my son, loves the soul of your daughter. Would you consider giving her to us as wife? And if you do that, then we can be bound up together. You can marry our daughter, we can marry your daughters, you can marry our daughters, and you can literally take and live with us, and you can take the land that is in front of you, you can live there, you can live off the products of its land, you can take from it as a possession. This is a great offer. This is not a situation of a woman being humiliated and thrown out that we hear a great deal. Remember the story of one of David's sons raping his half-sister and throwing her out immediately after? This is a wooing, a wooing of Dinah. And Shechem then says, to her father, and her brothers. If I have found favor in your eyes, one can't help but feel that if this had been the sin, the horror that it is made out to be by the rabbis later, would Hamor and Shechem been able to have an audience with Jacob and his sons and to speak in this elevated language, if I have found favor in your sight? Note the silence of Dinah and the silence of Jacob here. If I have found favor in your sight, then will you tell me so that I can give to you? Tell me what your dowry would be. Moha is the word for dowry. Tell me what I should be paying for your daughter's hand in marriage, and I will give you just as much, if not more, of what you ask for. And I shall give it all to you in order to have this girl as my wife. V'ya'anu v'nei Yaakov et Shechem v'et Hamor aviv b'mirma v'yadbru asher timei et Dinah Hachotam vayomru aleihem lo nochal la'asot hadava hazeh letet et achotenu leish asher lo orla ki cherpa hi lanu ach bezot neot lachem im tihiyu kamonu lihimol lachem kol sacha v'natnu et banotenu lachem ואת בנותיכם ניקח לנו וישבנו אתכם והיינו לעם אחד, ואם לא תשמעו אלינו להימול ולקחנו את בתנו והלכנו ויתבו דבריהם בעיני חמור ובני שכם בן חמור, ולא אחר הנאה לעשות הטבה, כי חפץ בבת יעקב, והוא נכבד מכל בית אביו, ויבוא חמור ושכם בנו אל שער עירם, וידברו אל אנשי עירם לאמור, האנשים האלה שלמים הם איתנו, וישבו בארץ ויאסרו אותה, והארץ הנה רחבת ידיים לפניהם, את בנותם ניקח לנו לנשם, ואת בנותינו נותן להם, אך בזאת יעטו לנו האנשים לשבת איתנו להיות לעם אחד, בהימול לנו כל זכר כאשר הם נמלים. So the brothers of Jacob answer Shechem and Hamor, his father, but they answer him with deceit. And they say this, and what they say is because of this bad thing that had been done to Dinah, their sister, who had been defiled. And they said to them, we cannot do this thing. We cannot give our sister to this man because he has a foreskin. He is not circumcised. And this thing is very unpleasant, is an abomination for us. Therefore, if you do this thing, if you want to be like us, then you have to circumcise all the males in your community. And then we will give you our we will give you our daughters to you, and your daughters we will take, and we will live together, and we can be as one people. But if you do not listen to us, if you do not agree to circumcise all the males in your community, then we will simply take our daughter away from you, and we will leave. But astonishingly, these words were good, felt right in the eyes of Hamor and in the eyes of Shechem. And it did not seem too much for the girl that they wanted, because, as they said, Shechem loved the daughter, or desired the daughter of Jacob greatly. And Shechem was revered and respected in all of his father's house. So Hamor and Shechem returned, and they came to the gates of their city, and they spoke to all the men of the city, saying to them, "These men come to us. These men come," and here another terrible irony, they come in peace, these men. They come to us in peace, and they will dwell in our land, and they will take from our land, and they will live amongst us and live alongside us on our land. And there is plenty. We will compromise and we will do business together, and this land is right in front of them. And they will let us have their daughters, and we will offer our daughters. In other words, we will be with them, and we will live together with them. And this is a good thing for them to live with us as one people. But the rule is, or the request is, that we circumcise every male among us, just as they are circumcised. Now, we know as the story continues, but it continues for quite a while, that what happens is that they agree. Every male in the city of Shechem is circumcised. They agree. Can you imagine agreeing all this? It really reminds me of the story of Helen of Troy. They agree. And on the third day, when the pain is at its greatest after a circumcision, Shimon and Levi lead their brothers and the people of Israel into a very savage attack of the city of Shechem, where every male is slaughtered and women were stolen and taken to the Israelite people. And Dinah, of course, is taken back, and we never hear of Dinah again. And more than that, we know that every rule in Torah that is discussed, and greatly in the book of Deuteronomy, is what happens to a woman who has been raped. And she becomes worthless. She becomes thrown out, worthless. And yet Dinah was offered a life of being part of Shechem, and not just. We don't often hear of love in the way that we hear of love between Shechem and towards Dinah. Dinah remains silent, just as Jacob remains silent until Jacob chastises his sons. So I discovered this. Winston Churchill wrote, "Too often the strong silent man is silent only because he does not know what to say, and is reputed strong only because he remains silent." And this instance of Jacob's silence is so interesting. This indictment we have of a man who says so little, but then chooses to speak when he says to his son, "This thing you have done is wrong. You have brought us into disrepute. You have confounded me. You have not acted, achatem oti, you have not acted as my family." And so we have this thing, you have discomposed me, of what this story is. Is it about Dinah as a woman? in Torah being used as a pawn around who can enter the community? Is this a story of xenophobia and keeping the purity of the family of Israel? Is it a story about a woman wronged? Is it a story about disingenuous bemirma, deceit? So I invite you to think about that, and I invite us to think about our role as contemporary Jews to listen carefully about everything that happens around us, so that there is room for questions when things are not clear. How can we care for each other, our community, when we don't understand each other's stories, this sense of learning from the silence of Dinah? And we will compare this story known perhaps, and I give you the opportunity to think, is this erroneously known as the rape of Dinah? And let's compare it to other stories.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher nosan lanu tov v'rasemes v'chayei olam notah b'socheinu Baruch atah Adonai nosein haTorah.
Amen. Yeshua. Let's stand if you can as we raise the scroll. Philip, you up for that?
Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah. Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah. Le'amo Yisrael b'kedushato. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu v'hishtachtavu v'har kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu v'hishtachtavu v'har kodsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Romemu. Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Romemu. Eloheinu v'yishtachavu v'har kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu v'yishtachavu v'har kodsho. Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Romemu. Ki Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Romemu. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu v'hishtachtavu v'har kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu v'hishtachtavu v'har kodsho.
Thanks, Dean. We go now to the Haftarah. Let's sit down. So the Haftarah that reflects this is a story from later in Tanakh. And this is one where, just like the story of Dinah, asks us to think, to give voice to Dinah, when so often we just don't hear what women felt or wanted in these stories. But the contrast to this later story in the book of Judges is at a time when Israel was really tribes throughout, and judges ran the land, judges like prophets. And this is a story known as the Levite and his concubine of Gibeah. And this story bears much resemblance to the story of Lot and Sodom and Gomorrah. And the reason why I think, and I really feel so committed, both as a liberal Jew and a Jew, to read parts of our tradition that are difficult, is because if we are to be, as John Rayner asks us to be, as Edmund Flegg comments we are, to use our Judaism to make us more responsive, more thoughtful about what it means to live in the world, then it means to listen to our stories. In a moment, we'll hear about more recent stories as we prepare to mark Ajex Shabbat. But for now, this brief story, a brutal story, just calls us to realize that there are parts of Torah where we learn from of what to do, and there are parts of Torah where we learn things that happen in barbaric times that, thank God, we no longer do. But the end of this reading that Margot will offer for us it says the whole of Israel needed to speak of it because this thing needed to never happen again. On this desk. Thanks, Margot.
We praise you, Eternal One, our God, Sovereign of the universe. You inspired faithful prophets and took pleasure in the words they spoke in truth. We praise you, O God, for the gift of Torah, your servant Moses, your people Israel, and the prophets of truth and righteousness. The Levite replied, "We are travelling from Bethlehem in Judah to the remote hill country of Ephraim, where I'm from. I went to Bethlehem in Judah, and now I'm going to the house of the Eternal, but no one has taken me into his home. Even though there is both straw and feed for our donkeys, and bread and wine for me and the maidservant and young man with me, there is nothing that we, your servants, lack." "Peace to you," said the old man. "Let me supply everything you need, only do not spend the night in the square." So he brought him to his house, and he fed his donkeys, and they washed their feet, and they ate, and they drank. While they were enjoying themselves, suddenly the wicked men of the city surrounded the house. Pounding on the door, they said to the old man who owned the house, "Bring out the man who came to your house so we can have relations with him." The owner of the house went out and said to them, "No, my brothers, do not do this wicked thing. After all, this man is a guest in my house. Do not commit this outrage. Look, let me bring out my virgin daughter and the man's concubine, and you can use them and do with them as you wish, but do not do such a vile thing to this man." But the men would not listen to him, so the Levite took his concubine and sent her outside to them, and they raped her and abused her throughout the night, and at dawn they let her go. Early that morning, the woman went back to the house where her master was staying, collapsed at the doorway, and lay there until it was light. In the morning, when her master got up and opened the doors of the house to go out on his journey, there was his concubine, collapsed in the doorway of the house with her hands on the threshold. "Get up," he told her, "let us go." But there was no response. So the man put her on his donkey and set out for home. When he reached his house, he picked up a knife, took hold of his concubine, cut her limb by limb into 12 pieces, and sent her throughout the territory of Israel. And everyone who saw it said, "Nothing like this has been seen or done from the day the Israelites came out of the land of Egypt until this day. Think it over, take counsel, and speak up." We praise you, Eternal One, our God, Sovereign of the universe. You have been our source of strength and righteousness throughout the ages, and the faithful God whose word is deed, whose every word is true and just.
Thank you so much, Margot, for reading such an extraordinarily difficult passage with such sensitivity and highlighting that sense that we have to read about it, we have to raise our voice, we have to understand, and we have to take our responsibility. Thank you so much. So we prepare to put the scroll away, but first we have our prayers for community. Thank you, Corinne. And then we will put the scroll away and take pause from this rather interesting morning to pause and mark Ajax Shabbat.
Eternal God, we ask your blessing on our Queen Elizabeth and all the royal family, as well as those who govern our country. Guide them and all who govern in the spirit of peace.
Let's stand.
Bless our brothers and sisters of the house of Israel. Bless our congregation and all its members. Be with those who seek your presence and all who are in need of healing, spiritual and physical. Let them know that you are near to comfort them and sustain them. May peace exist in the state of Israel, soon and in our time. May you, eternal God, grant blessing to her, established as an old age queen and home to the oppressed. May its leaders and the citizens be inspired with a faithfulness to the aims of its founders, and may the country be imbued with the prophetic ideals of liberty and justice always. May this Sabbath renew our energy to build and to sustain a better world, and to deepen our great gratitude to so much that surrounds us. And let us say,
Amen. Thank you so much, Corinne. So, if we prepare, please stay standing as we put the scroll back in the ark. We're on page 489. It's Hayim Hi Lamach Hazikim Ba. It is a tree of life to those who hold onto it. Do not forsake it. Help us to return to you, O God.
Hashivenu Adonai elecha v'nashuva Kadesh Yameinu kegedem Kadesh Yameinu
So we have a moment before we reach the end of our service to turn to Ajax Shabbat, which we know the Sunday after Remembrance Sunday, our own Jewish ex-service men and women march on the cenotaph, are given a huge honour for doing so. My own step-grandfather Arthur Lawson has been invited to lay the wreath tomorrow and feel incredibly proud of him. So I have asked Stanley and Philip, who really hold this tradition strongly in our congregation, to just share two things on our Bima this morning before we offer the Ajax prayer. So Stanley, if I can ask you first, you were going to share the poem of Isaac Rosenberg. which I have here also for you if you'd like.
Can we speak together? Because we don't duplicate it.
Lovely.
We'll do a double act.
Lovely.
Double act.
Lovely, lovely.
You want to start?
You go first.
I'll do the first first.
Yeah, all with them together.
Yeah? Okay. Well, first about, good morning, Shabbat Shalom, about Ajax. Who are Ajax? Their aims are simple, to continue remembrance of the Jewish contribution to the military, to combat anti-Semitism through education, to provide welfare for Jewish veterans and their families. With over 120,000 Jews who served in the British Armed Forces during the two World Wars, Ajax GMA ensures that the immense contribution is never forgotten. They also work closely with the armed forces, representing those in the Jewish community currently serving wherever in the world. The contribution of British Jews to the freedom and security to the UK has been outstanding, but like those of all minorities, it could quickly be forgotten. The annual Remembrance Parade and ceremony in Whitehall brings together all ages of the community to demonstrate our loyalty, take pride in our military activities, and to remember all the Jews who fought for our freedom. So I ask you, in fact, I implore you to join us on Sunday, tomorrow, at the Cenotaph, which is 2 o'clock parade, those who want to support, and 1:30 are those who want to fall in the parade and Horse Guards parade, to watch the parade and ceremony, to honour our fallen heroes. At the end of the short service at the Cenotaph, which Rabbi Harry Jacobi used to represent progressive Judaism, the end of the service, the words are, "We will remember them." Thank you for that.
Just to add to that, Ajax also do a fair amount on welfare. So since the Great War, Ajax has been supporting ex-Jewish service personnel and their families. Oh, that's a good thing. I've lost my place now. Ex-Jewish personnel and their families who have found themselves in difficulty, from providing specialist advice and guidance to financial aid. They're there to support the well-being of those members of our community and their families who need their help. They also work closely with other organisations to ensure our beneficiaries' dignity and to help them maintain their independence wherever possible. They're also they're at the forefront of fighting anti-Semitism. So even though 90% of young British Jewish men of military age fought for Britain during the First World War, a new anti-Semitic trope made the rounds that Jews didn't do their part. Through their education work, they are fighting anti-Semitism in the UK by showing our patriotism, an outstanding contribution to the society around us. With the recent rise in anti-Semitism, this work has never been more crucial. To that end, as Stanley said, we have the parade tomorrow. If you can make it at 2 p.m. at the Cenotaph, your presence would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Philip and Stanley. And we offer now, I'm going to ask us as a congregation to stand. Philip, stay up here with Stanley to offer the Ajax prayer. I think that statistic is startling. 90% of young British Jewish men did their part. And I have been spending all week trying to find the full letter that King George VI wrote to the Jewish community at the time, thanking them for their good wishes to him and for the contribution they made. And all I have found is one line when he says that the Jewish community's commitment, contribution and good wishes to him meant an enormous amount. So we are bound up in this country that we live in. Stanley, if you would like to read on our behalf.
I would like to read this, and before I do, I'd like to make the point, actually, that Jews over many thousands of years, have always tried to contribute to the country that they lived in. And to take for example, the First World War, many German Jews fought in the army and served in high positions. In France, the same. The Dreyfus affair was well known. Dreyfus himself, when released from captivity, went back to serve in the army. Jews have always felt they to support, as British Jews, to support the country they live in. And in these times, with liberal Jews, we're often bound up with current affairs. And I think it's important that we do that. But I also think it's important that we reflect on the bygone age when Jews fought for their country to give us the freedom that we have to do today's work. That's my personal view. I personally did national service for 2 years.
Stanley, I'm aware our children are going to come in, so
Okay.
I want us to move to this prayer.
And
now.
Philip has served in reserves. Lord of the universe, at this time of solemn reflection and remembrance, we salute the courageous British and Allied soldiers who served and died in the cause of liberty, right and justice. Many were proud Jews who prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice on our behalf. And this heroic service continues in UK, Israel, and around the world. We remember also 6 million innocent victims of the Shoah and countless others murdered by the Nazis. We pray that we, who have survived, may carry forward the torch of memory and merit your grace to flourish in the life of Judaism and serve our Queen and country proudly in the cause of peace.
And let us all say, Amen. Amen. Thank you so much, both of you. I look forward to seeing you down at Horse Guard Parade tomorrow. So while we're standing, I think we are going to offer just on the foot of page 519, so as we have extra songs today. So while you are standing, just to remember our commitment moving forward. Avinu Sheb Bashamayim, Yached Shimcha Kayam Malchutecha Tamid, Umloch Aleinu Leolam Va'ed.
Adonai Melech, Adonai Malach, Adonai Imloch Leolam Va'ed.
So we turn now to the Kaddish together, and we have much to remember if we think of those who sacrificed their own lives to keep this country safe, those who chose to fight or maybe didn't even choose to, those who looked after their fellow soldiers, those who waited for their loved ones to return, sometimes when they did and sometimes when they didn't. We take this moment to recall all who lost their lives in such wars. And we turn to our congregation also at this time as we remember the yahrzeits of Ian Goodman, father of Karen Goodman, of Harry Rosen, father of Neil Rosen Webb, and of Sid Stone, father of Josie Kintrin. Zichronam livracha, may their memories be for a blessing, and may those who remember and recall their loved ones be comforted in their loss, as we say the words of the Kaddish together. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shamei Rabbah, b'yama divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'hayachon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei dochol Beit Yisrael, v'agala v'zman kari v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mavorach le'olam ome'al maya, v'yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'a v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitada v'yitale v'yitalal shemei dekudesha brichu, leila min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechemata, da'amiram b'yama v'imru amen. Yehei shlama Rabbah min shamaya, v'hayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Ose shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'al kol b'nei Adam, v'imru amen. Let's sit down for a moment. I believe that some of the children are coming in to join us for Adon Olam. So a reminder of the march tomorrow. I'm so not used to doing announcements that I literally cannot remember what is happening next week. Hanukkah is coming up. Let me remind you all that Hanukkah is coming up. And on Monday, the 29th of November, which is the second day of Hanukkah, we are having a tea party here for all who feel able to come. We'll Zoom it too in case people want to have a cup of tea at home and be with us. If you'd like a lift to join us, 3 o'clock on Monday the 29th, hosted by Beverly Kafka, who leads our welfare group. So we really want an opportunity to just see people, and if you don't manage to come in on a Shabbat for services, to come for a donut and a cup of tea and a chance to be together, Monday the 29th. Everything else that clearly I can't think about now is in our weekly email to say that Mitzvah Day activities happen right now after the service. So if you're here and you don't have to rush, do stay with us. We have fantastic things to do to prepare packages for children to receive in Finchley Food Bank aid. We are going to walk over to their hub. We're going to deliver the check that we raised over our High Holy Days. We are writing cards and gathering chocolate, and some of our young people are doing excess shopping. I guess we're all going to be carrying what's here down to the hub. So we've got Margot in the building now, and Peggy and Alison will be meeting us after the service so that we are able to go down together to the hub. So I hope if you can, you'll stay, because it feels a wonderful thing that this year for Mitzvah Day, we're still engaged with the charities we chose to be in relationship with. We're going to end our service with Ein Keloheinu before we offer a little specialness for Mitzvah Day. we are going to offer a song about doing a mitzvah leading to another mitzvah. So mitzvah goreret mitzvah, the idea that when you do something that you're compelled to do that's going to be good, it will create more and more. I remember Sheila spoke beautifully about this, that when you kept your room tidy to please your mother to get a bicycle, you actually enjoyed your room being tidy, right? So mitzvah goreret mitzvah.
Mitzvah goreret mitzvah. Avera goreret avera. Mitzvah goreret mitzvah. Goreret mitzvah. Da 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 da. A mitzvah goreret mitzvah. Avera goreret avera. Oh, oh, mitzvah goreret mitzvah. Goreret mitzvah. Da 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 da.
Beautiful. If that doesn't inspire us to do good works today, lovely. I realize, everyone, you're going to be very disappointed if you have to chew a piece of frozen challah. So it seems that I've got 2 frozen ones here, and I don't know if there is one in the kitchen ready for you to eat. So I'm just going to, there isn't, so we might have to take a moment to prepare it for you on your way out. So let's stand for Kiddush. Knock back your palwins before you have to wait for the challah.
Veshamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat, ledorotam berit olam, beini uvein b'nei Yisrael, oti le'olam, ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et hashamayim ve'et haaretz, uvayom hashvi shavat vayinafash. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen.
Amen. So this is going to be delayed eating. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. Shabbat shalom. So that's what I just said. That we haven't been given challah, so this needs. There's no more.
Because Pauline's away.
No, but we always have it from the freezer and defrost it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.